Ladies and gentlemen, I thought I'd start with 4 poems concerned with landscape. I've always had a thing about limestone. Well, the first one is about a limestone landscape which actually is Florence. The second one is about the first limestone landscape I knew as a child. The first poem is called In Praise of Limestone. If it form the one landscape that we, the inconstant ones, are consistently homesick for, this is chiefly because it dissolves in water. Mark these rounded slopes with their surface fragrance of time, and beneath a secret system of caves and conduits, here the springs that spurt out everywhere with a chuckle, each filling a private pool for its fish and carving its own little ravine, where cliffs entertain the butterfly and the lizard. Examine this region of short distances and definite places. What could be more like mother or a fitter background for her son, the flirtatious male who lounges against a rock in the sunlight, never doubting that for all his faults he is loved, whose works are but extensions of his power to charm. From weathered outcrop to hilltop temple, from appearing waters to conspicuous fountains, from a wild to a formal vineyard, are ingenious but short steps that a child's wish to receive more attention than his brothers, whether by pleasing or teasing, can easily take. Watch then the band of rivals as they climb up and down their steep stone gennels in twos and threes, at times arm in arm, but never, thank God, in step, or engaged on the shady side of a square at midday in voluble discourse, knowing each other too well to think there are any important secrets, unable to conceive a God whose temper tantrums are moral, and not to be pacified by a clever line or a good lay. For accustomed to a stone that responds, they have never had to veil their faces in awe of a crater whose blazing furies could not be fixed, adjusted to the local needs of valleys where everything can be touched or reached by walking. Their eyes have never looked into infinite space through the lattice work of a nomad's comb. Born lucky, their legs have never encountered the fungi and insects of the jungle, the monstrous forms and lives with which we have nothing, we like to hope, in common. So, when one of them goes to the bad, the way his mind works remains comprehensible. To become a pimp, or deal in fake jewelry, or ruin a fine tenor voice for effects that bring down the house, could happen to all but the best and the worst of us. That is why, I suppose, the best and worst never stayed here long, but sought immoderate soils where the beauty was not so external, the light less public, and the meaning of life something more than a mad camp. Come, cried the granite wastes, how evasive is your humor, how accidental your kindest kiss, how permanent is death. Saints to be slipped away sighing. Come, purred the clays and gravels, on our plains there's room for armies to drill, rivers wait to be tamed, and slaves to construct you a tomb in the grand manner. Soft as the earth is mankind, and both need to be altered. Intendant Caesars rose and left, slamming the door. But the really reckless were fetched by an older, colder voice, the oceanic whisper, I am the solitude that asks and promises nothing. That is how I shall set you free. There is no love, there are only the various envies, all of them sad. They were right, my dear. All those voices were right and still are. This land is not the sweet home that it looks, nor its peace the historical calm of a site where something was settled once and for all. A backward and dilapidated province connected to the big busy world by a tunnel with a certain seedy appeal. Is that all it is now? Not quite. It has a worldly duty which, in spite of itself, it does not neglect, but calls into question all the great powers assume. It disturbs our rights. The poet, admired for his earnest habit of calling the sun, his mind puzzle, is made uneasy by these marble statues which so obviously doubt his anti-mythological myth. And these gamins pursuing the scientist down the tiled colonnade with such lively offers rebuke his concern for nature's remotest aspects. I too am reproached for what and how much you know. Not to lose time, not to get caught, not to be left behind, not pleased to resemble the beasts who repeat themselves, or a thing like water or stone whose conduct can be predicted. These are our common prayer, whose greatest comfort is music, which can be made anywhere, is invisible, and does not smell. And so far as we have to look forward to death as a fact, no doubt we are right. But if sins can be forgiven, if bodies rise from the dead, these modifications of matter into innocent athletes and gesticulating fountains, made solely for pleasure, make a further point. The blessed will not care what angle they are regarded from, having nothing to hide. Dear, I know nothing of either, but when I try to imagine a faultless love or the life to come, what I hear is the murmur of underground streams. What I see is a limestone landscape. Well, but now I get back to my early childhood landscape. This is actually, if you want to know a historical fact, it's the valley of Rookhope in County Durham. It's called Amore Loci. I could draw its map by heart, showing its contours, strata, and vegetation, name every height, small burn, and lonely shieling, but, nameless to me, faceless as heather or grouse, are those who live there. It's dead, too vague for judgment, tangible only what they wrought, their giant works of delve and drainage in days preterite. Long since their hammering stopped, as the loads all petered out in the dew limestone. Here and there, a tough chimney still towers over dejected masonry, moss, decomposed machines, with no one about, no chance of buttering bread, a land postured in my time for marginal farms. Any musical future is most unlikely. Industry wants cheap power, romantic muscle, a perilous wilderness. Mr. Pleasure pays for surf riding, claret, sex. It offers them none. To me, though, much. A vision not, as perhaps at 12 I thought it, of Eden, still less of a New Jerusalem, but for one convinced he will die, more comely, more credible than either daydream. How, but with some real focus of desolation, could I, by analogy, imagine a love that, however often smeared, shrugged at, abandoned by a frivolous worldling, does not abandon? I've always had a thing about the North, and I'd always wanted to go to Hammerfest, and at last I got there, which is the northernmost city in the world. The only thing I should point out here, there's a phrase called the moral circle. Well, this is a phrase used by southern Norwegians to mean the Arctic Circle. And there's also reference to Germans because in 1945, the Wehrmacht burnt down every house in Hammerfest. For over 40 years, I'd paid it Atlas homage. The northernmost township on earth, producing the best deep-frozen fish sticks one can buy. For 3 days, I pottered round, a monolingual pilgrim, and drank the beer of the world's most northern brewery. Though miles beyond the moral circle, I saw no orgies, no great worms, nor dreamed of any during 3 sunny nights. Louts, though, Germans this time, had left their usual mark. How much reverence can anyone past 50, afford to lose? Was it as worldly as it looked? I might have thought so, but for my ears. Something odd was happening sound-wise. A word, a laugh, a footstep, a truck's outcry, each utterance rang singular staccato, to be cut off before it could be contradicted or confused by others. A listening terrain seized on them all and never gave one back in echo, as if to land as desolate, as far up, whatever noise our species cared to make still mattered. Here was a place we had yet to disappoint. The only communities it had to judge us by were Cenobite, mosses and lichen sworn to station and reticence. Its rocks knew almost nothing about the glum reptilian empire or the epic journey of the horse. It heard no tales of that pre-glacial Actium when the huge archaic shrubs went down before the scented flowers and earth was won for color. For all it knew, religion had begun with the Salvation Army, warfare with motorized, resentful conscripts. Ground so bare might take a century to realize how we behave to regions or to beings who have anything we're after. To have disgusted millions of acres of good-natured topsoil is an achievement of a sort. To fail to notice how garden plants and farmyard beasts look at us or refuse to look, to picture all of them as dear, faithful old retainers, another. But why bring that up now? My intrusion had not profaned it. If innocence is holy, it was holy. Two rather gloomy pieces. The first is called Old People's Home. All are limitary, but each has her own nuance of damage. The elite can dress and decent themselves, are ambulant with a single stick, adroit to read a book all through or play the slow movements of easy sonatas. Yet perhaps their very carnal freedom is their spirit's bane. Intelligent of what has happened and why, they are obnoxious to a glum beyond tears. Then come those on wheels, the average majority, who endure TV and, led by lenient therapists, do community singing. Then the loners muttering in limbo, and last, the terminally incompetent, impeccable, improvident, unspeakable as the plants they parody. Plants may sweat profusely, but never sully themselves. One tie, though, unites them. All appeared when the world, though much was awry there, was more spacious, more comely to look at. Its old ones with an audience and secular status. Then a child in dismay with mamma could refuge with gran to be revalued and told a story. As of now, we all know what to expect. But their generation is the first to fade like this, not at home, but assigned to a numbered frequent ward, stowed out of conscience as unpopular luggage. As I ride the subway to spend half an hour with one, I revisage who she was in the pomp and sumptuary of her heyday, when weekend visits were a presumptive joy, not a good work. Am I cold to wish for a speedy, painless dormition? Pray, as I know she prays, that God or nature will abrupt her earthly function. This is Circe. Her telepathic station transmits thought waves. The second rate, the bored, the disappointed, and any of us, when tired or uneasy, are tuned to receive. So, though unlisted in atlas or phone book, her garden is easy to find. In no time, one reaches the gate over which is written large, "Make love, not war." Inside, the weather is warm like a drowsy September day, though the leaves show no signs of turning. All around one notes the usual greens and blues and reds, a shade overemphasized. The rose bushes have no thorns. An invisible orchestra plays the great masters. The technique is flawless, the rendering schmaltz. Of herself, no sign. But just as a pilgrim is starting to wonder, have I been hoaxed by a myth? He feels her hand in his and hears her whispering, "At last. With me, mistaught one, you shall learn the answers. What is conscience but a nattering fishwife? The tree of knowledge but the splintered mainmast of the ship of fools. Consent, you poor alien, to my arms where sequence is conquered, division abolished. In the perfect orgasm, soon, soon you shall, pet, be one with the all." She does not brutalize her victims. Beasts could bolt or bite. She simplifies them to flowers, sessile fatalists who don't mind and only can talk to themselves. All but a privileged few. The elite she guides to her secret citadel, the tower where a laugh is forbidden and do harm as thou wilt is the law. Dear little not-so-innocents, beware of old grandmother spider, rump her endearments. She's not quite as nice as she looks, nor you quite as tough as you think. The last one I read is called Moon Landing, and perhaps there's one word in this which is not a very common word, but I assure you it's in the Oxford Dictionary, which is the word os, which means presage. Moon Landing. It's natural the boy should whoop it up for so huge a phallic triumph, an adventure it would not have occurred to women to think worthwhile, made possible only because we like huddling in gangs and knowing the exact time. Yes, our sex may in fairness hurrah the deed, although the motives that primed it were somewhat less than menschlich. A grand gesture. But what is it period? What is it os? We were always adroiter with objects than lives, and more facile at courage than kindness. From the moment the first flint was flaked, this landing was merely a matter of time. But ourselves, like Adam's, still don't fit us exactly. Modern only in this, our lack of decorum. Homer's heroes were certainly no braver than our trio, but more fortunate. Hector was excused the insult of having his valor covered by television. Worth going to see, I can well believe it. Worth seeing, nay. I once rode through a desert and was not charmed. Give me a watered, lively garden, remote from blatherers about the new, the von Browns and their ilk, where on August mornings I can count the morning glories, where to die has a meaning and no engine can shift my perspective. Unsmudged, thank God, my moon still queens the heavens as she ebbs and falls, a presence to glop at. Her old man, made of grit, not protein, still visits me in my Austrian several with his old attachment, and the old warnings still have power to scare me. Hubris comes to an ugly finish. Irreverence is a greater oath than superstition. Our apparatniks will continue making the usual squalid mess called history. All we can pray for is that artists, chefs, and saints may still appear to blight it. Thank you. Then we must be very brief with a few Clerihews. Fort Greville, you wrote beautifully at sea level, with each rising contour as verse got progressively worse. The Geheimrat in Goethe was all the curter when Leute were leery about his colour theory. No one could ever inveigle Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel into offering the slightest apology for his principles of phenomenology. Mallarmé had too much to say. He could never quite leave the paper white. Paul Valéry earned a meagre salary walking through the bois, observing his moi. Good Queen Victoria, in a fit of euphoria, commanded Disraeli to blow up the Old Bailey. Whenever Xantippe wasn't feeling too chippy, she would bawl at Socrates, "Why aren't you Hippocrates?"